Hello.
We can start.
Good evening and welcome. My name is Naveen Kishore. I'm the publisher at CL Books, and I have the wonderful duty of introducing our conversationalists. But before I do that, being a man of the theater, let me begin by setting the scene a little bit. And in Friedrich Ani's own words, the quotation. This is Friedrich on his crime writing. The detective novel, he says, forces you to look into the present. The drama of the person trapped in his living room is best for me with the detective story. Without me, as the author, worrying about murder and manslaughter and spectacular plots. In my crime novels, slowness and silence determine the course of the plot. Although a certain amount of tension that is usual for the genre must remain. Indispensable. In addition, new doors can always be opened in the crime thriller style of writing, so I deal almost exclusively with disappeared and missing persons and the search for them. I welcome Friedrich Ani, our dear friend and author. He is an award-winning German writer of poetry, novels, young adult fiction, radio plays, screenplays. He is the recipient of many and numerous awards, including the prestigious Grimm Award and the German Crime Fiction Award for the German edition of his novel, The Nameless Day, which we published with much pride some years ago. He lives in Munich. Translation is what Siegel does. This is what we do. Or to quote our dear friend and that other wonderful British crime writer, Anne Cleeves, who wrote the foreword for the new book that we have just sent to print, Killing Happiness, also by Friedrich Ani. I quote Anne, who says, by becoming immersed in another's culture, literature, we have a sense of its preoccupations, both political and domestic. There is no pretension. The story carries the reader along. In the case of Ani's style, Anne has this to say, quote, I felt I was as if I was stepping into an impressionistic painting. Reality was there, ever present, but it was blurred, hard to grasp. There are no firm lines and no certainties, unquote. So yes, subtlety above all. I also welcome Sandip Roy. Sandip is our dear friend and author and writer and journalist and podcaster. And Sandip will be in conversation with Friedrich Ani. And I think that's the best possible introduction over an hour that can take place. Over to you, gentlemen.
Thank you so much, Naveen and Friedrich Ani. Welcome to the conversation. Welcome virtually to Kolkata.
Thank you for the invitation. Nice to meet you.
Good to meet you too. Before we go into the world of detectives and murders, in this series, I've been asking everybody we talk to about the thing that has been preoccupying all of us around the world, the pandemic, the lockdown. So I wanted to check in with you first and ask you if anything has surprised you about what these last 2 years and how our world has changed or not changed.
Well, the pandemic is a surprising thing. We're always surprised and terrified. And for myself, the first weeks, I realized that I liked the silence. This was strange because we saw, all of us saw the pictures of the sick people and the complete change in the world. But I thought that that from the beginning on, honestly, I thought we can make it. We will find some medicine and we'll survive. And surprising was, of course, that suddenly people with very strange thoughts came up, and people who had obviously had no did not trust medicine or the sciences, and thought that there is a big black, the dark community which influences us and makes us sick. Such things. So all these.
Did it create more polarization, like we heard in the US, or did it create a greater sense of community that we are all in this together?
Yeah. I think in Germany it's not as crazy or as bad as in the USA. So I think there is a community. A community came up. A lot of people became companions in a certain way, and try to help each other and try to encourage each other. So no, I see more a community than a chaos.
Speaking of companions, I read somewhere that you found new companions during the lockdown, a squirrel and a little bird that you made friends with. Is that true?
Well, you are reading interesting things about me. Yeah, that's true. I have a small. I'm living in one room, and I have a small balcony, and normally I don't use it because I'm in my room or I'm outside of the room and not on the balcony and watching the sky or something like that. But in these times, the birds came and the what's the English word for the squirrel? Squirrel. And so yeah, I have new friends, and I hope they stay with me after the pandemic.
Well, we hope so. Now to go back to your writing, and I read you started writing as a child. How old were you, and what kind of stuff were you writing? Were you writing detective stories then also?
No. It was very late when I began to write straightly detective stories. Of course, I started with lyrics and poems because I like music so much, and I listened to music, pop music, folk music, and I played piano, and so I had a deep affection to music, and and then it's like maybe like a young child discovers the music and then begins to play piano and play guitar. So for me, it was the words. It was just to write down something, some strange sentences, short stories, very, very short stories. And I loved the writing. I loved to write, to sit there and write something, and it astonished me. I was it was fascinating to see that there's something in me which I don't know, and then suddenly it's on the paper, and I can read it, and I can read it loud, and I can give it to my friends. And
so you would share it. You would share it with people. It wasn't just something for yourself.
No, this was very interesting. I discovered it later, in later years, that in the very beginning, I love to share it. and I wrote small scenes, like cinema scenes for 3 or 4 people, and then for other children, so or young adults, and they played it. They spoke it, and there was action. Yeah, and this was interesting because when I became 14 or 15, it completely changed. I turned inside, and I did not want to. I didn't want that somebody reads what I was writing. I just wanted to stay by myself.
Why was that? What do you think happened when you were 14?
I was not able to communicate. I had problems with communication, not with language, of course, but what I saw, what I felt, what I thought. There was only, I don't know, the books which I read, and when I tried to communicate with my heart, I wrote it down. I could not talk about it. So and I think it was a little bit dangerous times because it was like a kind of a panic room in which I lived, and I did not want to go out, even though I played football, so and I had to go to school, of course, and to speak, but I think this was the time when I discovered silence and to be with my own, on my own, and it was a techniques of surviving something, surviving the distance I felt between me and the others and my parents and friends. So
did that distance have anything to do with the fact that you were of mixed heritage, that you were Syrian and Silesian? Did that have anything to do with that distance?
Maybe. My father was a man who did not talk much, except in his work. He was a doctor later on, but at home he was rather silent. He did not like to speak much. Maybe this has something to do with my evolution, my inner evolution. But I'm not sure. Maybe I was a stranger from the beginning on. So it was. I was not. They did not expect to have a child, and this was normal. But I came and I was there, and maybe I felt something, maybe, and then. And I tried to arrange myself with the circumstances, which I thought they are as I felt them. Maybe I was wrong, but the writing was more than this as a psychological theme or so. It was fun as well. It was power and energy, and the reading was energy and power. When I read books, when I discovered new novels and new poets, and so then very early I discovered Bob Dylan when I was 11, 12, and the lyrics, and Dylan Thomas, and many poets, and so on. This brought me forward. This pushes me on to write by myself.
So did you find, when you say you discovered silence, did you find silence oppressive, or did you find it powerful in terms of a place where your imagination could run wild?
Super powerful. It was it was everything. The moment it was silent, and I was on my own in a room, one person in a room, and with a silence around. I think I was free. It was this kind of freedom, and suddenly I had the feeling I could talk to everybody, to everyone, maybe just to my characters, but I also felt that my characters are my world. They are real, and they are kind of they are real. They're like real persons, and I can communicate with them. I can learn something from them, even so. Writing is a strange job, as you know.
I mean, do you think there's something to do with this? I mean, it occurs to me that your detectives and many other detectives that are out there tend to be kind of loners. They're often people slightly outside the mainstream. They exist in sort of cocoons of silence because they're kind of thinking and not. Did that draw you towards detectives even before you started writing detective fiction? Did that attract you about detectives?
Yeah, maybe so. I did not think about it, but I think that's true. That's true. And I think I think a good detective has to be a loner to listen enough and to see enough, and he has to stand besides the crowd and does not belong to anyone, more or less. So this is good for his work, and maybe it's. Yeah, I think, I don't know if it's true, but I think that there are many crime writers and their main characters, their detectives, are the doubles of themselves, of the writer.
Well, I'm going to ask you: is that if that's true for you, you must be schizophrenic since you've created so many different detectives. You have too many doubles of yourself.
No. They are all brothers and sisters. So this is one family. I think, in my opinion, this is a house in which they all live, and they do their work, and they have to do with murders and murderers, and have to do with missed persons, but yeah, but they are all loners. They are all it's always the one person in a room on a pale afternoon, and with and realizing that God doesn't answer. That's the story of my writing. It's all more or less all characters, the important and the less important ones. It's all more or less. It's the main scene in their lives is being alone in this room on a pale afternoon and wondering why God doesn't answer.
Is there a long and rich crime writing tradition in Germany? Like, we hear so much about the Scandinavian crime scene, but I don't know whether there's something similar in Germany too.
We have a new scene since 20-25 years with young writers, new writers, referring, of course, to the international crime writing system. But we have lots of writers who tell stories about special regions in Germany. And we had a a genre tradition before the Second World War in the 30s, and so with in the movies and in literature. And then the Nazis break it up, and then then we have a big television crime scene from the 50s, 60s on. So and on literature, many things changed. So we have very good writers and a lot of writers, and the genre is making money. It's
That's
great.
important. But when we, sitting abroad, when we keep hearing about the Scandinavian crime scene, is that annoying for people in Germany and other parts of Europe that everyone's obsessed with Scandinavian crime?
In the beginning, it wasn't annoying. In the beginning, it was great, and they have great writers.
Right.
Really, they have not 100 great writers, but a lot. And in the meantime, I mean, yeah, the Nordic blue and the Nordic. I don't know. I can separate them, but they are all the same now. I don't know. But as I hear or see, is that still it brings money. So there will be new Scandinavian writers somewhere, and it's a dark, it's a dangerous area, Scandinavia.
Well, in the introduction to Killing Happened, in the foreword, the bit Naveen read from Anne Cleeves, where she talks about her passion for reading translated crime novels. And she says, as Naveen said, by becoming immersed in another culture's popular fiction, we have a sense of its preoccupations, both political and domestic. Do you yourself find yourself reading much translated crime novels from other parts of the world? In your book, Nameless Day, Jakob Frank's ex-wife has a little store where she stocks some 300 crime novels from around the world whose names are only known to people who are really interested. But is that any area of interest of yours?
Of course it is. Of course, I hope I learned a little bit from all these writers from abroad, from America or England or France, Italy. Yeah, of course. I have a lot of it's all full here with writers from other countries. Yeah, of course. One of my favorites is since so many years is Cornel Woolrich, a writer whom nobody knows in Germany, but Woolrich yes, we have Italian writers here. I'm just looking for. I discovered some weeks ago. I discovered a book. It's from Poland. It's from Poland. Oh. A Polish writer, a young woman. Crazy story, great, hardcore, very good. So there always new books come up. Are obviously brilliant translated. So it's wonderful. Yeah. It's a big worldwide crime family.
So tell us how you said initially you were writing poetry, song lyrics, you were reading Dylan Thomas and Bob Dylan. How did you get interested in writing crime fiction?
It just happened. I think I don't know. It came. I had no plan. I did not start like a James Ellroy or so, and said when I was 18 or 17, I want to become a crime writer and want to find a home in the genre. I just wanted to tell some stories, and some stories from which I thought they could be interested also, or people told me. I go to taverns and to pubs all my life, and people tell me stories. I don't know why. They just, maybe why I don't speak. I don't know, but I always read these crime stories and saw the movies and television, and I loved it. But nobody came and said, try to write a crime story. Nobody. When I wrote my first professional crime stories, I almost was 40 years old, so it came late. And suddenly I realized that this is my home. This is, I don't know why I didn't start earlier, but this suddenly I realized to all my characters, all my very overshadowed characters are at home in a kind of a crime story. Missed persons, people who run away and try to change their reality, which never succeeds, never, which is very, very, very complicated. It's difficult.
What drew you to Missing Persons? Because your character Jakob Frank, his job, he has this rather strange job, where he goes to the homes of people who have been missing to sort of say, I'm sorry, I have terrible news. Body of your child or whatever has been found. What drew you to this idea of a missing person as kind of the cornerstone of the books?
I think it comes from my youth. I think since I was 13 or 14 years old, I want to hide myself. I want to go away, to run away. And I wasn't courageous enough. But this was, I think every day I woke up and said, I have to go. I must disappear. I don't want to be seen. I want to be watched. I have to be invisible. This has maybe something to do with the area where I live, but it was an inner move, and I always wanted to be away, to be somewhere in a house where nobody knows each other. Nobody. So, and this was my kind of a vision of my life. I did not succeed. Now my name is on books, but my feeling is still there. So, and then when I started to research this theme and went to police departments and talked with the policemen and the detectives, the real detectives, I met so interesting people, interesting detectives, and who were with such an empathy at work, and they loved what they do and what they did, and then I realized that writing about missed persons is nothing happens. There's no action. It's just there's no murder. There's no blood. Normally, just someone is gone, and there's an empty room, and maybe a crying shadow in the corner. And this I found interesting, literally interesting for literature. That there is no, you have no big scene. You have no actions. You have no fires burning. It's just dark. Somebody is away. So
it's an absence. It's like a hole. There's a
Yeah.
hole in the family, which also, while reading both The Nameless Day and Killing Happiness, it struck me that because these books focus on a whole, and in both these books, it's a child, a school-going child who has disappeared and died. It also, besides the mystery that needs to be solved as to why has this child disappeared, who did it, it also, because of this whole, the books are also a dissection of the effect of grief on a family, which is not always true in other crime fiction, where who did the murder is the bigger thing. Whereas here, the shadow of that whole on the mother or the father and the relation becomes a large part of that book too.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Yes. My focus is on the characters, on the family members, the members of a family, and if I had something to say in a publishing house, I would say let's write on the first page who it was, and who's the gangster. Then we have this is okay. Then we have this solved. We have this problem solved. So, and the rest is what I'm talking about. So this is my yeah. I'm just and all my stories are character driven, and the plot comes, of course. Plot. Every taxi driver has a plot to tell you, and plot is not the problem. Yeah, the people are the problem.
That's really interesting what you said, Friedrich, where you say that you would be almost inclined to reveal who was the murderer early on in the first page. So, because do you think, as readers, we engage with mystery novels differently from other novels? Is the pleasure we get from reading them more like solving a crossword or a Sudoku? Because as a reader, I'm sort of competing with the detective to find out who it is, which is not true in other books.
You are right. Of course, this makes the success of the genre. That you are try as a reader, try to be a detective and try to find out what happened. And of course, yes, this is the reason for the success. And that's a little problem for my work, because this is why I'm not mainstream. I can't do mainstream. It's when I try mainstream, it explodes. I have an other idea of suspense, not the suspense on the surface. It's a suspense inside the characters or inside somebody, and I always try to let me time with dialogues or in describing a certain atmosphere, a certain scene. So I'm not in a hurry.
Yeah, because your suspense in the books, for those who haven't read it, and there's a scenic reading on the Goethe-Institut site, so people can get a sense of it. The suspense is not always about finding out who did the murder. It is also the suspense of trying to figure out, is the mother going to come out of her shell of grief? Is the mother and father's relation going to split apart, or will they somehow come together in their grief? These are all points of suspense in the book, which are not necessarily about who committed the murder, which is very interesting to me.
Thank you. Well, that's true. Killing Happiness is a novel about the family, about destruction of a family, and the sadness and the tragedy inside the system of a family, and about a mother and even a brother sister story. Yeah, it's I mean, it's really about how happiness was killed. That's it. That's a story. Besides, it's a crime story.
Yeah, because there's a little boy who just doesn't come home from school one day and he disappears. Can't be found for days, and what happens with it. And that's, I mean, there have been so many films. There are films in Bengal, not necessarily about crime, but what happens when somebody just doesn't come home from work one day. And there's a very famous film in Bengal, which is just about the family trying to deal with the mystery of this sudden absence, which may or may not ever be explained. But you mentioned that you started talking to police detectives and you found them fascinating. And it made me curious that the various detectives you've created have all been part of the police system. Jakob Frank is a retired inspector. Then there's Tabor Sood, Fariza Nazri, who is in the police force. In our sort of mind, popular crime fiction, the famous detectives have often been private detectives, whether it's the Hercule Poirot or Holmes or a Miss Marple. And the police have often been shown as a little bumbling and not very efficient, which is why the private detective can work. What drew you to place your characters within the police force?
For me, it was interesting to work out the problems, so to speak, a personal detective, some detective who really who does not go home and then the case is in the departments. So the case is always in his heart, in his head, and then this brings out conflicts with the system in which he is working, and he has to refer to rules and something like that. So they look at him. The other detectives look at him, Tabor Sood also, or the other characters, and they said that he is a little bit crazy, because it's too personal. He takes it too close to him. He is not professional. He's sentimental, or is. And this I liked, these conflict situations. So somebody has to explain what he's doing and so on. And the character of the figure of a private detective, private eye, is it's a very British or American tradition. And, maybe this is also a reason why. But as a citizen, as somebody who watches the whole life, during the whole life, the work of police, and so I'm a very critic, and it's not so that I say, they are heroes or something. I don't. I think my detectives are not so heroes. They just try to make their work so good as they can. But they are no heroes. But I like crime stories very much, or movies in which a detective or a private eye is against the system or against the police system. In South American crime literature, you will never find a positive detective, because they hate the police, and they don't like the police. and they have their reasons. So that's an interesting story. The differences in the world, how to deal with the theme and how to deal with the police, the work of the police as a writer.
And I think it's actually really interesting because in some ways I think it's actually more challenging to have a police detective, because you have to have somebody who is within that system and still somehow apart from it, whereas a private detective is like a freelancer. You know, he can do whatever he wants. The rules don't apply to him in a way they do to the police detective, which leads me to this question. In both these books, you have many scenes of Jakob Frank talking to these witnesses again and again, trying to find things they might have missed. Sometimes he's very firm, sometimes he's trying to coax them, sometimes he's a little intimidating. Did you have experience, did you get to see or read police interrogations? Because that's so much a part of these books.
Yes, I did. I read this kind of interviews, and I like them because they are if there is a suspect and he has a secret, and they talk to him for hours and hours, and this is very interesting to read it, because I'm not allowed to read it, but I did.
How did you read it? How did you get to it?
This is my secret.
Okay.
No, it's illegal, of course. But it's so interesting because you see how a person lies to itself, to try to cheat himself, and try to find lies, and they don't fit anymore, and it's chaotic. And it's very interesting to read these dialogues between the detective and the suspect, and so, and they are long, hundreds of pages, often, and besides that, I like these theater situations in my novels. There's somebody coming on stage and then talking, and then or monologues. Yeah, I like that the people are allowed to speak a lot, to hold a monologue, and dialogues also. What I mean, these theater moments, I like very much, and I like to just that a character is defined over his speaking, over his words and lies and silence. So I like that. This is not so based on research, police research, but just as I like as a writer to write this way.
Well, Jakob Frank is, of course, a retired inspector who is, kind of helps out, and because these stories about missing and disappeared people affect him so deeply. So a lot of his conversations are not happening inside a traditional interrogation thing in a police station. He is meeting. I was just struck by the amount of beer that is drunk during these conversations, because beer seems to be a very good way to get people to loosen up and confess things.
I'm not sure. Maybe. Of course, you read certainly some novels by Georges Simenon. Yeah. You did, of course, I think, and what they are drinking in the books. This is Champions League kind of of drinking. No, it's normal. It's not. It's the drinking is just maybe to make a situation easier or so. It's not
So that's a
not to
scene.
make somebody drunk or so. No, it's just you can't drink water all the day.
It's also very boring to write about drinking water.
Maybe it's a new style though. Nobody is allowed to smoke and to drink, and everywhere is a moral police at the moment. Yeah.
That'll be a new generation of crime fiction, make it even more challenging. Forget Sherlock Holmes, who was taking opium and cocaine, and from there we've come to only drinking water. But talk a bit about you. There is this idea that you have of Jakob Frank's technique of what he calls, well, in the English translation, is called thought sensitivity.
Mm-hmm.
What was that idea, and how did you come about it as as part of Jakob Frank?
Mm-hmm. I did not search for it. I developed the character and the Nameless Day story, and I started to write about Jakob Frank as a, for me, new character, new detective, bringing people bad news and so, and there was the scene in his room, and I started to write it, and I exactly knew what he was doing. He was trying to bring together thoughts and feelings of a case, and he said to himself that he will not separate what he feels from, on a crime scene and what he thinks about the situation and thinks about what he knows as a detective, what he has learned, and so on. And so he takes his feelings serious as well as the facts he had. And this I tried to bring together, and that's all. And then I invented the word for it. In Germany, it's Gedankenfühligkeit, and it's just a word. And obviously he talked about it in police school, and all his best colleague says, never do it again, because then nobody will become a policeman anymore, because they think there's crazy people there. But he for him it's a possibility to find something out, to find out what could be true, what is behind the facts, and what is in me. What do I feel? And if I feel so, why do I feel so? And why does this not fit together with a fact? There's something in my brain and something in the rest of my body which doesn't fit together. And so it's simpler as it sounds. It's a kind of a technique he developed for himself. But excuse me, often so it's something, some moments really came up in while during the writing. It's not planned. I like the scenes which are not planned.
Speaking of things that don't fit, in the Nameless Day, there's a young woman who is found hanging in the park, and it is ruled a suicide. And this is a case that has happened some 20 years ago. It's Jakob Frank starts looking at the case again because her father comes to him, and he doesn't think it was a suicide in that. And also in Killing Happiness, the person who's died is a younger boy. Both are students. Is this just coincidence, or are you really interested particularly interested in children and adolescents and understanding their anger or feeling like they're not fitting in?
Yes, I am. Maybe I never wrote a novel in which there is no young person, no child or young adult. So yeah, that's right. That's right. I can't explain. I wrote some books for young adults and for children, and I loved it. And then I stopped it because things changed. So maybe I will do it again. But yes, that's it's in my world. For me, my world of writing is not real without children, without one child in a story or so. Yeah,
Why do you think that is? Why do you think that is? That it doesn't feel real until at least there's one child?
I don't know. Maybe it's me. It's just strong memories from former times. It's all me. I'm the old ones and I'm the young ones, and the man and the woman and the women. So the children, yes, of course. When I see it, a child comes up in the scene, writing, and then a child comes. I see the child is coming up out of the dark when I open the door, and I know it will tell me something which I didn't know before.
Which was the first? You have 4 detectives, if I'm correct. You created 4 detectives.
I don't count them.
Yeah, you don't count them. Well, okay. Who was the first one that you created?
Yeah, the first one was Tabor Süden. Tabor Süden. This was the first detective. It was a series. Then there was a series of books, and yeah, he was the first one, and he was the master of missing persons, and this was the character who just came up in a time when I didn't know if my way has still a future, my way of living, of writing, because I had at that time I had published some poems and short stories and destroyed novels in my room and so, and something has to happen, and I did not know what could happen. That I had no ideas, no real ideas. And then a publishing house gave me the chance of writing a story, a crime story, and then I realized that this could be a door through which I can go, and then I went, and then I don't know. I was in a bar, and then there was sitting a man, and I saw him, and I recognized him. I didn't know him before. I recognized him, and then I started to write romance, being naked in a wood, and had not found a missed child. This was trauma, and this was Tabor Süden, and I had no name. And then I gave him, I named him Tabor Süden because this was the name I wanted to take as a pseudonym, as a name for me as a writer when I was 4 years old. And and I did not take this name for me because I saw that nobody will believe that somebody is named Tabor Süden. But then I had no other name, and I thought the publisher will come and give me a better name. But the name remained. So this was so that's me.
So that's Tabor Süden. There's Polonius Frank, who I guess was originally a monk and then becomes a detective.
Yeah.
And Fariza Nasri, who is of Arab, German mixed heritage, and So when you have these four detectives, so in one of your books I read, which I haven't read, called In All the Empty Rooms, all four of them come together.
Yes.
Was that challenging as a writer to suddenly have them all in the same book?
The first idea some years ago was to bring together Tabor Süden and Polonius Fischer, the ex-monk, and have a novel with these two guys, with two strange characters. And then Jakob Frank came up, and I thought this could be challenging for me to bring them together and have a story, and they have to do something. Everyone from his side, they not go together through the story, but everybody from his side. And then I had to realize that it didn't function. The three guys, it didn't work. And then I thought I need a fourth person, a fourth character. And I thought, and nothing happens. And then I thought of a lady, of a woman, with a backstory. And then I came to Farisa Nasri, and then I had no biography of her. I knew everything about her life as a detective, but nothing about her personal life. And so I gave her mine, and that's all.
And then they all come together like a superhero film, like Marvel or Avengers.
Yeah, but it's the opposite of a Marvel film.
It is the opposite, but
exactly. The super loser are coming together. Yeah, but, no, they are not super losers, but yeah, they
super loners.
Super loners. Yes, thank you.
Do you think though that when you look at detective fiction, some people say that in the end detective fiction is sort of ideologically conservative because it defends a sort of social status quo. It says the criminal is the bad person who will be found out and punished, and in that sense it's like a literary comfort blanket that is telling us that justice will be served, evil will not go unpunished, and the status quo in the end will be preserved. Do you think that's fair?
People who say that and who think that, I think they are right. It's absolutely right. 90% of all the crime stories, crime novels, and genre films, genre movies are that way. And that's why they are successful and or more or less successful. So that's true. That's true. It's a truth that the most people read crime stories because the world is hale. It's solved. Problems are solved, and everybody is safe. Because we have these super detectives and we have the super policemen. And we are safe. Of course, this is right. But there are 10% of the crime scene writers who don't work this way, and I hope I'm one of them. Our world is not. It's not bright in the end. The shadows are still there.
Yes, and definitely that is what you feel. I don't want to obviously give away the endings of the book, but the ending, sometimes you feel at the ending there are more shadows there than at the beginning. At the beginning there was a hole, but at the end, just solving, you realize that at the end solving a crime does not mean the hole gets filled. The shadows, the scars will continue.
Yes, maybe a crime is solved, but life is not solved. That's all.
Which is actually a wonderful note for us to end on, because we are almost up with our hour. And I wanted to encourage people. I know the new book, Killing Happiness, is going to be out soon, but you can actually go to the Goethe-Institut Kolkata website and you will have a scenic reading from Killing Happiness, which is done in English by Ovid Sen and in German by our guest, Friedrich Ani himself. And so you will get a little taste of what Killing Happiness is about. And with that, our next session will be on Thursday, 18th November, where we will be talking with Durs Grunbein. And but before that, let me say thank you to Friedrich Ani for spending this hour with us and talking about crime and detectives, which I have to say was, given everything that's going on in the world today, it was actually a real pleasure to spend an hour talking about crime and mystery. So thank you very much. And we hope to hear a lot more from all your detectives in the future.
Thank you very much, Sandip. Thank you for inviting me. It was a great pleasure.